If you are over 60 and you wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning staring at the ceiling, if you fall asleep easily enough but wake up feeling like you never truly rested, if you've tried melatonin and magnesium and every sleep hygiene tip your doctor has given you and nothing has fixed the feeling that your body has simply forgotten how to sleep deeply, I want you to stay with me for the next few minutes because what I'm about to share is not another supplement. It is not a new mattress or a white noise machine. It is a 3-minute practice that Jewish women have been doing at the edge of their beds for over 2,000 years, and that modern sleep science has now caught up to in ways that genuinely surprised even me. And I've spent 40 years in medicine. My name is Dr. Sarah Levine. I trained at Hadassah Medical School at Hebrew University of Jerusalem. I've practiced preventive medicine for over 4 decades, working with communities in Israel, New York, and here in Boca Raton, Florida, where I've lived for many years now. I am 68 years old, and I can tell you honestly that the sleep I get tonight, deep, unbroken, genuinely restorative, is not because of anything I learned in medical school. It is because of a ritual my grandmother Rachel performed every single night of her life, without exception. From the time she was a young girl in Łódź, Poland, through everything she survived, through every decade she lived, all the way to 98 years old. What I'm going to teach you today is one piece of a larger system I've spent the better part of my career documenting. I call it the 7 Jewish Laws of Longevity, 7 ancient practices that Jewish tradition has preserved for thousands of years, and that modern science is now validating one by one. Today, I'm focusing on a specific practice within Law 1, the Law of Sacred Rest. It is a 3-minute ritual performed at the edge of the bed before sleep. It has a name, it has a specific order. And toward the end of this teaching, I'll share something my grandmother only explained to me when I was well into my 40s. The element of this ritual that she said most people perform incompletely, and why that matters more than I initially understood. I grew up watching my grandmother Rachel move through her evenings with a quality I can only describe as intentional. The dinner dishes would be cleared, the kitchen would be quiet, and then before she ever lay down, she would sit at the edge of her bed, not in a hurry, not distracted, not with her mind already racing ahead to tomorrow, and she would do something very specific. I used to think it was just prayer. I was a young medical student by the time I understood it was something far more sophisticated than that. My grandmother came to this country after surviving things I will not name here because they are too heavy for this moment. What I will tell you is that she carried those experiences in her body the way many women of her generation did, quietly, completely. And yet she slept deeply, consistently until the end of her life. She never took a sleeping pill. She never complained of the kind of fractured, anxious, early morning wakefulness that I hear from almost every woman over 60 who walks into my practice. I used to attribute her sleep to personality, to temperament. Then I opened her notebooks, small journals she kept in Yiddish, filled with remedies and observations and practices passed down from her own mother, and I began to understand that her sleep was not an accident. It was the result of something she did deliberately every night, without fail. Before I go further, I want to ask you to do one thing. Type something in the comments right now. Type the words, "My rest is sacred," just those 4 words, because the entire teaching I'm sharing with you today rests on that belief, not as a sentiment, not as something nice to say, as a physiological fact that Jewish tradition encoded into nightly practice long before we had the neuroscience to explain why it works. Let me tell you what is actually happening in the body of a woman over 60 at night, because I think you deserve the honest picture rather than a vague reassurance that everything is fine. The statistics are not comfortable. According to research published through the National Sleep Foundation, women over 60 are significantly more likely to experience disrupted sleep architecture than men of the same age and far more likely than younger women. This is not imaginary. It is driven by real physiological changes, shifts in estrogen and progesterone that alter the structure of sleep cycles, changes in core body temperature regulation, increased sensitivity to cortisol at night, and a gradual shortening of the deep, slow-wave sleep stages that are responsible for cellular repair, immune function, memory consolidation, and metabolic regulation. The Centers for Disease Control reports that more than a third of American adults overall are not getting sufficient sleep. And among older women, the figures for truly restorative sleep are even more sobering. When a woman over 60 comes to me and says she's exhausted despite spending 8 hours in bed, I believe her completely. She is not being dramatic. She is describing what happens when the body is present in bed, but the nervous system never receives the signal that it is genuinely safe to descend into deep rest. That signal, and this is the part that took me years to fully appreciate, is not primarily chemical. It is primarily neurological, and it is something that can be deliberately initiated. The question is how. The conventional answer is usually some variation of the same advice: dim your lights an hour before bed, stop screens, take magnesium glycinate, keep the room cool, avoid alcohol. These are not wrong. They are incomplete. They treat the sleep problem as a bedroom logistics problem when it is actually, in the language of modern neuroscience, a nervous system state problem. A woman who has spent her day in sympathetic activation, which is the technical name for the fight or flight response, does not transition into deep restorative sleep by changing her room temperature. She transitions when something shifts the nervous system from sympathetic to parasympathetic dominance. That shift requires a specific kind of intervention. And this is precisely what the ancient Jewish bedtime ritual was designed to produce, though the rabbis of the Talmud did not use that vocabulary. In Tractate Bereshot of the Talmud, one of the oldest and most comprehensive texts on daily Jewish practice, the sages established a specific practice called Kriyat Shema al Hamita, the bedtime recitation of the Shema. This is not simply a prayer before sleep. If you read the full halakhic discussion around this practice, what emerges is a remarkably sophisticated protocol. There is a specific physical posture. There is a specific breathing cadence implied by the text's pacing. There is an act of conscious release, a forgiveness of anyone who wronged you that day. That precedes the recitation itself. There is a deliberate review of the day, brief and non-judgmental, called Cheshbon Hanefesh, an accounting of the soul. And then there is the Shema itself, recited in a specific way, with the eyes covered, in a lowered voice, with full attention on the meaning of the words. Maimonides, Rabbi Moses ben Maimon, the 12th century physician and philosopher who served as personal doctor to Sultan Saladin and whose medical writings remain startlingly relevant today, wrote in his Mishneh Torah, in the Laws of Human Dispositions, that the condition of the mind at the moment of sleep determines the quality of the rest that follows. He was writing in 1180. What he described is what researchers at Harvard Medical School's Division of Sleep Medicine now call pre-sleep cognitive arousal, the state of mental activation that prevents the nervous system from down-regulating into deep sleep stages. Maimonides understood that you cannot simply lie down and expect the body to do what it needs to do. You must prepare it. You must give it a signal. The ritual is the signal. Here is what the 3-minute Jewish sleep ritual looks like when I teach it to women in my practice, grounded both in the traditional sources and in the physiology I understand as a physician. The first element is posture and position. Before you lie down, sit at the edge of your bed. This is not incidental. The Talmud in Bereshit specifically references sitting before the full recitation. Sitting keeps the spine neutral and allows the breath to move freely through the chest and belly. Place both feet flat on the floor. Let your hands rest open in your lap, palms up. This posture, feet grounded, hands open, sends an immediate signal to the amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, that you are not running from anything, you are not defending anything. Open hands, in particular, have been studied in the context of what psychologist Amy Cuddy and her colleagues at Harvard describe as low power, low cortisol posturing. Postures that measurably reduce the stress hormone cortisol in the bloodstream within minutes. My grandmother simply knew that you sat down gently and let your hands rest open. She did not know the neuroscience. She did not need to. The second element is the release. In the traditional text, before reciting the Shema, there is a brief statement of forgiveness, a declaration that you release any grievance against anyone who wronged you that day. I want to speak to this carefully as a physician, because what sounds like a religious formality is actually one of the most powerful physiological interventions I know of for sleep. Carrying unresolved interpersonal tension into sleep, the low-grade irritation with a family member, the lingering sting of a comment, the worry about something someone said, activates the same cortisol pathways as physical threat. The body does not distinguish cleanly between an argument and a predator. Both register as unresolved danger. The deliberate act of releasing grievances before sleep, not because you are condoning what happened, not because the feeling disappears, but as a conscious physiological choice, and has been studied extensively in the context of what forgiveness researchers at Stanford's Forgiveness Project, led by Dr. Fred Luskin, describe as a measurable reduction in sympathetic nervous system activation. In the Jewish bedtime ritual, you simply say, internally or quietly aloud, that you release it, all of it, until tomorrow. You are not solving it tonight. Tonight you release it. The third element is the breath and the Shema. The traditional recitation of the Shema, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, takes approximately 6 to 8 seconds when spoken slowly and deliberately, which is exactly within the range of what cardiologist Herbert Benson at Harvard identified decades ago as the relaxation response breath, an exhale of 6 to 8 seconds that activates the vagus nerve and shifts the nervous system from sympathetic to parasympathetic dominance in a way that no supplement fully replicates. Whether or not you are Jewish, whether or not the words carry religious meaning for you, the physiological mechanism of a slow, deliberate 6 to 8 second vocalized breath, said once with full attention with the eyes covered by the hand, is real. After the Shema, breathe in slowly for 4 counts. Hold briefly. Exhale for 7 counts. Repeat this 3 times. That is the complete breath sequence. It takes under 90 seconds. The fourth element is the brief accounting. The Cheshbon Hanefesh, not a rumination, not a worry session, not a replay of everything that went wrong. One sentence, one honest, non-judgmental sentence about your day. Something true, something you are grateful for, something you noticed. My grandmother used to say it was like setting down a bag you'd been carrying. You acknowledge what was in it. You name it. You put it down. Research on expressive writing before sleep, including studies published in the Journal of Experimental Psychology, has found that even a brief, structured reflection, not open-ended worrying but organized acknowledgement, reduces the intrusive thoughts that fragment sleep onset and cause early morning waking. My grandmother's cheshbon took 30 seconds. It was never elaborate. It was simply honest. What you should expect if you do this practice consistently, and I want to be medically honest with you about the timeline, is not a miracle on night one. Some women feel a difference in the quality of their sleep onset within 3 to 5 nights. The deeper effects, the shift in how long they stay in deep sleep stages, the reduction in that 3 a.m. waking, the quality of how they feel when they rise in the morning, those changes tend to appear more fully over 3 to 4 weeks. This is consistent with what we know about vagal tone. It builds with practice, the way any physiological capacity builds. It is not instant, it is real. There is something else I want to tell you. The piece my grandmother revealed to me when I was in my late 40s, during a period when my own health had become alarming to me. I was experiencing what I can only describe as a complete system breakdown: chronic fatigue, hormonal disruption, memory that felt like fog I was trying to see through. I was practicing the bedtime ritual incompletely. I was doing the Shema. I was doing the breath. What I was skipping, and my grandmother noticed when she asked me to describe my evenings to her, was the release. The second element. I was going to bed carrying every unresolved grievance, every worry, every conversation that had not ended cleanly. She told me then something I have never forgotten. She said that in her tradition, taking unsettled business to bed with you was not just emotionally unwise, it was considered a form of disrespect to the gift of sleep itself. In the Jewish understanding of night, sleep is not simply rest, it is a small experience of surrender, a nightly practice of releasing control. She told me that this was the part most people rush through or omitted entirely, and that without it, the rest of the ritual was like lighting a lamp in a house with no windows. I think about that image often, especially now when I look at what is happening in the world around us. We are living in a moment of sustained collective anxiety. The news cycle, the uncertainty, the speed of change, all of it is keeping the nervous systems of women my age and older in a state of chronic low-level activation that makes the kind of deep repair sleep provides almost impossible to access. The ancient practices I've spent 40 years documenting were not designed for easy times. They were designed for exactly this, for generations that had real reasons to carry weight, real threats to process, real grief to metabolize, and still needed to sleep, still needed to restore, still needed to be alive in the morning. My grandmother used to say that these practices don't work the way pills do. You cannot take them once and expect results. They work the way tending a garden works, with consistency, with patience, with the understanding that you are building something that compounds over time. The 7 Jewish laws of longevity that I've spent 40 years documenting work the same way. Each law is meaningful on its own. Together, practiced with consistency, they produce something that I have watched change the health of women in ways that conventional medicine alone could not achieve. Law 1, the law of sacred rest, is where most women I work with begin. Sleep is not a luxury in this system, it is foundational. Without it, the other 6 laws are attempting to build on sand. What I've taught you today, the 4 elements of the 3-minute ritual, their physiological basis, and the mistake my grandmother identified in my own practice, is one of the most important teachings I share. But I want to be transparent with you. There is a dimension of this law that I have not covered today, which is the practice of Shabbat as a weekly reset of the entire sleep-wake system. The way Jewish tradition structures the 7th day is not simply religious observance. It is, as researchers studying Blue Zone communities around the world have noted, one of the most consistent features of populations that maintain health and cognitive clarity well into their 80s and 90s. That is a full teaching on its own. I'll bring it to you in a coming video. To summarize what you carry with you from today, you sit at the edge of your bed before lying down. You release deliberately, briefly, completely any grievance from the day. You recite or breathe the Shema or simply breathe for 6 to 8 seconds on the exhale 3 times. You offer one honest sentence of acknowledgement to your day. That is it. 3 minutes. 2,000 years of lived evidence behind it. And a growing body of neuroscience confirming the mechanism. In our tradition, the body is not yours to neglect. It was given to you in trust, Tselem Elohim, formed in the image of the divine. To care for it, to protect its rest, to honor its need for genuine restoration is not self-indulgence. It is Shmirat Haguf, a sacred obligation. Every woman in this community who chooses to do this practice tonight is doing something her great-grandmother would have recognized immediately. She is doing something Maimonides described in 1180. She is doing something that modern sleep medicine is only now learning how to measure. If this teaching reached you at the right moment, please share it with a woman you love, a sister, a friend, a daughter who is watching her own mother not sleep. Leave me a comment telling me which element of this ritual surprised you most. And if you haven't yet subscribed and clicked the bell, do that now, because what I'm bringing you in my next teaching is a law that most women over 60 have been applying backwards their entire lives without realizing it. When I explain what I mean, I think it will change how you think about your mornings in a way that nothing else has. Until next time, l'chaim, to life.